Yo, let's go and welcome to the video. So this one's going to cover a bunch of things. It's going to be all over the place. If you are looking for a specific topic in this video, check out the description and skip ahead using one of the timestamps. So starting off with idle swapping. I've done a lot of math on it, and long story short, it doesn't look to be a DPS increased, like potentially, but what it is like a safety net. If you've ever been casting Wrath after your solar phase ends or at the start of the fight and lunar phase just won't proc, then it's going to benefit you to have the Wrath idle on. If your eclipses are proccing right off cooldown and right at the start of the fight, then you won't have the Wrath idle on long enough for it to increase your DPS. Still getting 99s doing it, but it's not going to get me like the 100 or whatever. One more thing about idle swapping before I switch topics. There's a couple idols in later phases, even up in Ulduar next phase, that we could use at like the start of the fight, and then we might just be keeping like the crit idol that's going to come out on for the rest of the fight. But if we're using Insect Swarm next phase at the start while we still have our 2-piece and we're still glyphing it, then maybe we could snapshot an Insect Swarm with the idol at the start of the fight and then swap it to the Starfire idol for the rest of the fight. Same thing later on down the line. I think it's an ICC. We get an idol that gives you spell power each time regrowth or rejuve ticks. I can't remember which one. So if we can stack that up at the start of the fight, get a regrowth cast, kind of like how people are stacking illustration at the start of the fights right now. If we can do that with that idol, I think it's gonna be a benefit. And now for a couple of changes I've made to my phase 2 set. So first things first, I was a little shy of the hit cap after the eye level boost, so I threw in a yellow gem with spell power and hit to get the hit cap. And there are some epic gems that you can put in your gear from the fishing daily for 23 spell power, and when they first were launched in patch 3.1, they were unique, but we're able to put them in every single slot right now on 80 upgrades. So that might not be a thing, that could change. But I plan on getting my alts fishing up just in case. I expect these to probably go for a pretty penny on the auction house. Another change is the weapon. The 10-man mace from the final boss in hard mode looks a little bit better than the weapon that I had. Instead of the mana per 5, it's got a different stat, which is what we want. And then comparing this to Valnir, it's not a huge difference. So I know I've been saying a lot, I want Valnir Prio, but after this 10-man item got boosted, I'm not so sure it's worth it to try to get Valnir anymore. Is it BIS? Yes, still, but hardly. So there was another set posted on the Druid Discord. I'll have that up on the screen now so you can compare the numbers. There's not just one set. If you prefer to have a little bit more haste on your gear, you can go for that. I prefer more crit, so that's why my set has a little extra crit on it. So another thing to consider is the difficulty of getting the loot. There's going to be some highly contested pieces and some that you can either get from the vendor or their BOE from crafted gear. And speaking of crafted gear, go ahead and get your cloth ready now. I'm a tailor. I've been crafting my own. So if you're not a tailor, find a guildie that is, give them the mats. There's some BOE belts and boots, and I plan on having the belt as my best in slot. But if you're interested in seeing a little bit about how I'm going to try to prio my gear, check out the podcast tomorrow over on Griftin's channel. It's a weekly podcast. We do it on Wednesdays at 6 p.m. Eastern time, and we'll be talking about a whole bunch of phase 2 stuff tomorrow. If you're watching this video after Tuesday, November 22nd, then I'll have a link to the VOD of the podcast in the description, and I'll have it posted at the very end of this video. So the PTR went live yesterday for everyone to test the Defense Protocol Alpha Heroics. I hopped in there and did Drakthron Keep, Nexus, and Calling of Strathholm. I think it's a pretty neat change. Any gear that I don't have upgraded on my alt, I'll just hop in the Heroic, activate the protocol, and try to get some extra loot. I'm curious to see how Pugs do in this because I was in like a pre-made group of 4 of us. Pugging this could be interesting. There was a post by a dev saying that Ulduar testing could open up on December the 8th, which is a Thursday, and run through the weekend and end on a Monday. I'll be trying to hop in there, do as much Ulduar as I can, see how the difficulty is. I'm not expecting it to be as hard as everybody says it's going to be, so we'll find out. So that's it for this one. Check out the podcast over on Griftin's channel tomorrow. Episode 4 will be right here on mine on November 30th, and we'll just keep alternating back and forth week to week. It's a beautiful day. I hope yours is as well.